Hey guys, this is Devin again from Scooters Canada. Today we're going to show you how to install some Apex pegs on a 2014 Lucky Crew. So first things first, make sure you get your tools together. We got some tools over here. You're going to need a 5mm and a 6mm Allen key. Today we got a 5mm and a 6mm T-handle Allen key, a 13mm wrench, a 13mm ratchet, a couple spare bearing spacers which you may or may not need, and your Apex pegs. We're going to use the bench vise again today because it works the best to hold the scooters upright. Make sure you put a rag in because you don't want to scratch it. Take it, throw it in. Go ahead and tighten that up. That'll hold it nice and straight while you're installing these. If you don't have one, usually what we'll do, set it on a bench, put it on the floor, undo your wheels, and follow the steps as we're going to go through. So first things first, go ahead and take off your front wheel. It's where you'll need one 5mm Allen key and one 5mm T-handle Allen key. One on one side, one on the other. Hold one tight and go ahead and spin the other loose. Keep turning that until you got it pretty much out. You just use your hands. So unthread that. So you got the one half. You can even use your Allen key to push out the other axle. Slide that out. Take the other half of your axle out. Hold under, slide your Allen key out, and the wheel will just fall out like such. Go ahead and take off your rear wheel. Pretty much the same story. You're going to hold one side with one 5mm and start undoing with the other one that you got. Turn that as far as you think you need to. You can go ahead and undo this with your hand. Undo this side. Half your axle. I usually take my 5mm, slide it back through where your axle goes through. It'll push out the other half of your axle. Throw your hand under. Be sure not to lose the deck spacers, which are the two spacers that go on either side of your wheel, that space between your wheel and the deck. Do not lose these. Oh, here's your new pegs. One will come with a short axle and one will come with a longer axle. Usually the longer axle is going to work better on the rear and the shorter one on the front. It all depends on what deck and what fork you guys have. In this case, I'm going to use the shorter axle for the front. Unthread your nut. Pegs are going to be going on the right side, so the bolt head is going to go in through the peg, like such. You can take your 6mm T-handle into the bolt head so it holds all together in one, and you can go ahead and push that through. Grab your wheel, push that through like such. When you turn this around, you want to see about this much of your axle coming out the other side. Take the washer, throw the washer on, take your nut, start threading your nut up, and you're just going to tighten that up. There's a front peg installed. If you find this too long, you can always take a grinder, cut off that end, or what you can do bolt's a little bit too long. You don't really want to cut it. Slide your axle out from the peg. You can take one of your bearing spacers and put it on the inside of the peg, like this. That now shortens the bolt by that amount. Slide your bolt back through your peg, 6mm T-handle back in it, and go ahead and slide that back through. Now your axle is nice and short. In this case, it's going to be a little bit too short, so we don't need the spacer in there. Just wanted to show you guys. So we're going to take that back out, throw this back through, throw your wheel up, slide that through, washer on, and go ahead and thread this nut on so it's nice and tight. Snug, so the wheel still spins nice and fast, nice and quiet. And there's your front peg install. Now we'll move to the back. You're going to take typically the longer axle. The decks are a little bit wider than the forks, again depending on what fork and what deck you guys have. Same story. So you got your axle bolt, your peg. It's going to slide through with your 6mm head inside the peg, like such. 6mm T-handle, throw it in there so it holds it all together like that. And what you want to do is slide it through without your wheel in it to test for bolt length and to see if the peg's going to hit the lip of the deck. Now what I mean by that, if you look right here, see how the peg isn't sitting flush on the deck because it's hitting this top lip. So now you need to take one of them bearing spacers and throw it right in between your peg and deck. Slide this back out, take your bearing spacer right here, spaces the peg out from the deck, and go ahead and slide that back through. It'll look just like that. Now once the peg is clear from the deck, go to the other side and you want to make sure you have enough threads to thread that nut on, which it looks like we have just enough. If the axle looks like this, the axle's too short, you need to buy a longer axle, which you'll find on ScootersCanada.ca. So now that we know this is the right length, we're going to put our scooter back in the stand and we're going to go ahead and install the wheel, spacers, and the peg. So take your 6mm into your axle kit with your peg and your bearing spacer so it sits nice and flush against the deck. So when you slide your axle in like such, take your one deck spacer on like this so it holds it together just like that. Take your wheel, gently place it in, you don't want to knock that spacer out. Then you can push the axle into your wheel so it holds your wheel. Once you know your wheel's held up and the axle is halfway through your wheel or so, take your other bearing spacer and place it where it needs to go, right in there, while you're pushing it through. You can also take your 5mm Allen key from the opposite side and help line up that deck spacer so the axle pushes through. So just play around with it for a minute until it slides right through, like such. You got your nut. Go Go ahead and thread your nut on a couple times. That's where your 13 mil ratchet comes in handy because it fits in there. And you can go ahead and tighten that up. If you're having problems trying to get the socket in there tight, what you need to do is you probably need to take a 13 on the side like this and just hold on to it while you tighten up your 6 mil bolt. So get that in there nice and tight. Just so enough of the axle is coming through the other end of the nut. Nice and tight. And there we go. We have a set of apex pegs on a 2014 Lucky Crew.